Now, welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Some Star Wars, where we're once again taking a look at a story arc from the Clone Wars, in this case the D Squad arc, and seeing how you all rated it and comparing it to all the other ones we've done thus far, before I then read and respond to some of your comments. Also this week, I won't be showing off any artwork because I haven't had all that much sent in lately, but what I did get will be shown off in a future video. But before we get to all that, originally this was going to be the last story arc I did for the Clone Wars, with my original intent or idea being to just form a top 10 of the best story arcs with this series. But I have decided to continue it and do a few more polls for a few more arcs, though I don't know that I'll do a video for each individual arc, but rather I'll make one video to cover several of them at a time. Either way, you can still head down and respond to my pinned comment below and nominate which one or ones we'll do next, and or vote with a thumbs up if they're already listed, and I'll just be doing polls for the top couple vote getters over the course of the next few weeks, most likely. Okay, all that said, and hopefully it made sense, let's get to the poll results for the D Squad arc, where we'll see that 13% of people gave it 5 stars and thought it was amazing, 29% then said it deserved 4 stars and thought it was good, 43% thought it was about average and gave it 3 stars, which left 10% to give it 2 stars, and a final 5% who thought it was terrible and gave it only 1. And so when we do all the math here, the D Squad arc ends up with an average score of 3.35 stars, which puts it into 10th place overall, and not that far ahead of the Clone Wars movie, which we're of course considering a story arc for the sake of these rankings. Anyway, here, I had no clue how people would rank this one, and honestly, I could have seen it finishing lower than this even. I mean, personally, it's not my favorite arc, and I know a lot of other people don't like it either. And if you love it, and some people certainly said they did in the comments, I think that's great, and I don't begrudge you for enjoying something that maybe I'm not the biggest fan of. Not that I think it's terrible, it does have its charm and its moments, but it does feel rather long. But before I get into all that, let's hear what you had to say about this arc. And as always, a big thank you to everyone who votes, comments, and watches the video, as well as to those of you who send in your artwork. And just a reminder, if you'd like to do that, please send it to the email address in the description below. And so as usual, let's now get started by reading the top rated comment overall, which this time came to us from Magnificent Sir, who said, "I'm glad that they introduced Gregor in this arc, but ultimately I don't think it needed 4 episodes. The last episode is actually pretty good, but I always find myself bored with the second episode in particular." And well, we'll talk more about Captain Gregor in just a moment, but I do agree this arc felt long, really long, too long, and I don't think the idea or concept behind it is horrible or anything. As I said before, there's some charm or redeeming qualities here, but I don't think it needed to be 4 episodes, and that second one in particular, called A Sunny Day in the Void, was the one that I thought really kind of dragged on, and I got a kick out of this comment here from EagleL425, who said, "The second episode dragged on like the void they were stuck in." And in all seriousness, I do almost think that was maybe part of the intent with that episode, to give you in some small way that feeling of what it'd be like to have to walk through this endless wasteland. And well, for me at least, they captured that feeling quite well. Anyway, let's now talk about Gregor a bit, starting with this comment from The Ghost Child, who said, "This is literally the one single arc episode I sincerely dislike. 2 stars just because of Gregor. Why? Come on, it's Gregor." Then this one from Andre Nitro X1000, who said, "Gregor is the highlight of that arc. While the droids are fun to watch, they didn't need so many episodes." We also had this comment from Russell Koo, who said, "This arc was extremely boring and hard to get through. The whole droid storyline was uninteresting. The only part that stood out to me was when Gregor showed up. He was the saving grace for this arc." Then we also had what Sam Dale had to say, which is, "The only reason it's not 1 star for me is because of Gregor. He was really cool." And there were many, many more comments about how Gregor was either the best part of the arc or the only good part of the arc, and that he kind of salvaged the whole thing. And for me at least, after not overly enjoying the first 2 episodes, it was cool to get this one and to not only see a Republic commando, but to get to see one in action. And don't get me wrong, it was really nice to briefly see Delta Squad in a previous episode, but it was really awesome to get to see, again, a commando in action. And I highly, highly enjoyed Gregor's last stand overall. It's up there with one of the best, coolest scenes in the entire series. And sure, maybe it didn't have quite the emotional impact or punch it would have had or could have had if we'd known him for longer than roughly 20 minutes, which is the length of the episode basically. But it was yet another example of a heroic, brave act out of a clone trooper. Anyway, all this kind of brings us to a comment from Mr. Puff, who said, 1 star. It was a missed opportunity to have a group of Republic commandos instead of D-Squad messing things up. And yeah, honestly, I would have loved to have, or preferred to have seen, a group of Republic commandos on a crucial mission for the Republic over what we got. Though again, if you love this arc, that's great and fine. I mean, we even have this little fun piece of info from Cameron Sharp, who said, fun fact, this is George Lucas's favorite Clone Wars arc. And to get technical here, I don't recall him saying this is his favorite arc, though maybe he did at some point, that's certainly possible. But I do know he said that A Sunny Day in a Void, again, the second episode, which a lot of people seem to have a problem with, was his favorite in the entire series, saying that it was a THX white limbo in Star Wars land at one point, which is, of course, a reference to his first movie ever directed, which is THX 1138, which, if you haven't seen it, is something you should check out if you are a George Lucas fan. It's certainly something different. Alright, next up here we have this comment from Caitlin Hedges, who said, I was disappointed with this arc because R2 is one of my favorite characters. The only part I liked was the part with Gregor. It was almost as bad as some of the Jar Jar episodes. This arc was too long and was the worst one of that season. I'm giving it 2 stars. Then we also had this one from A Potatoes, who said, I love this arc because I first watched it when I was way younger and when R2 was my favorite character. I still really like it, mostly because of nostalgia. And I still remember the first time this arc aired and they had the blue Clone Wars logo before it, and I thought, well, that's interesting, and quickly figured out that's because it's going to be mostly about R2-D2 and these other droids, which I think is one of the great things about the Clone Wars, that it is this anthology-style show, that different characters can be brought front and center and given the spotlight for different episodes and or arcs. And you could certainly say R2 is a character that deserved such treatment, though I really think they could have done better with him than they did in this arc. Next then, and kind of going along with this, we have a comment from Mike, who said, I give it 4 stars. It's a filler arc for sure, but I felt like it was well done, probably my favorite filler. With a show that has over 130 episodes, they can't all be genre-defining classics. There's going to be some slower bits. As far as fillers go, though this arc was enjoyable, for me at least, it made sense in the overall story and introduced Gregor well. I wouldn't skip it during rewatches of the series. And I kind of agree yet disagree at the same time, because yeah, obviously some arcs or episodes are going to be better and bigger than others. That's true of any long-running series ever. And though I think it's clear their goal is to make every arc or episode great in its own right, they're not out there trying to make each and every one something epic and game-changing. That's just not possible. Though that said, again, with this being anthology style, they really could avoid the more filler type episodes or arcs that a long-running show usually is almost forced to have to deal with. They could just jump to different characters or different parts of the galaxy and or war and tell only the biggest, most important stories. And for the most part, the show does do that. Even a lot of what you might call filler are critical stories. And in its own way, this arc is also an important story or mission in the Clone Wars, or for the war effort. It's just that the story itself feels like it's rather drawn out. Okay, and moving on now, we have this comment from Christian Thompson, who said, all I remember is being a 15-year-old watching this arc, and by the end of the second episode, I was like, really? More? You can imagine my immense disappointment when I found out it wasn't over at the end of the third episode. We also then had this comment from Star Wars 34, who said, so many people hate this for some reason, but I don't see why. It's a cool concept that makes sense. It may be a little more lighthearted than other arcs, but I still enjoy it. I could see the argument that it only needed to be 1 or 2 episodes, but that's not that big of a deal. 4 stars for me. And again here, I don't hate this arc. It has its charm, and when I rewatch the whole series, I just go through them and enjoy it for what it is. But when they originally aired, when everything was new and we only got 1 episode per week on Cartoon Network, I was, shall we say, a little less tolerant of this arc. Especially since, as some of you might remember, we got the first 2 episodes of this arc, and then the show took a month off during the holiday season, and then it came back and we got the next 2 episodes in the arc. So it was like this 2-month stretch in the heart of Season 5 where we got nothing but D-Squad, and at least I was wanting nothing more than perhaps a little bit more Darth Maul, or at least something else. Alright, and now let's get to just a few final comments before wrapping this up, starting with this one from Aaron King, who said, "This is actually one of my favorite arcs. I love the settings in the episodes, especially in The Void, as well as the unconventional story. It felt like a Star Wars adventure to me." Then this one from Colin Baker, who said, "I know this arc isn't considered one of the best arcs, but I love it. It shows one of the most consistent and most important traits of Clone Wars Anakin, his fear of loss, which would be shown again later in the season with the Ahsoka Walks Away arc, when Anakin loses R2 at the end, and he sends out a whole search party to find him. But I found this whole arc rather enjoyable, with Gregor and his little mini arc showing how clones are the perfect soldiers, and the interactions with R2 and the pit droid and the little general. I gave it 5 stars, but I think it speaks volumes about the consistent quality of the Clone Wars that one of the least liked arcs is still an average or a positive rating. I don't think that there are many shows that can make that claim." Then we also had this comment from John Wales, who said, "I feel like I was the only one that really enjoyed the arc. I can see where people wouldn't like it, but it reminds me of one of those childhood movies almost. Just a group of people thrown into a journey where at first they argue, but over time build friendship and respect. Just a cute little story, I guess. Pretty simple take on it, but I feel that's the point." Also had this comment from Julian Von Weirn, who said, "The arc was way too long, but I really liked the D-Squad and their journey. The idea of a clone commando with amnesia was pretty cool too." And finally here this comment from Skelly, who said, "It was a filler arc through and through, but it did give characters like R2 more spotlight, and it had some funny bits. Gregor was what sold it for a lot of people though. It's a shame we don't see more commandos throughout the show, especially Delta Squad. A brief cameo does not do them justice." And I think that sums up my thoughts on this arc quite nicely. It's certainly not my favorite. It does feel a bit too long and like it's a bit of a filler, but Gregor is awesome, and if you enjoy it, if you think it's great, that's awesome too. As I always say, Star Wars fans are going to enjoy different parts of it for different reasons, and I'm not going to be mad or upset that somebody might really enjoy a part of it that maybe I'm not so keen on. Well, that's all I've got for this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about this arc, or what I or anyone else had to say about it. Or you can of course nominate and or vote for the next couple arcs we'll do. Either way, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.